Hey everybody, just want to take a few minutes here and talk about caffeine, how it can affect your body, how it can possibly improve performance, what its potential side effects are. I'll give some recommended dosages and timing for intake, and then just talk about how you can decide if caffeine is right for you. So starting at the top, obviously caffeine is a very well-known substance. It's actually the most commonly used psychoactive substance in the world. 90% of American adults report using caffeine regularly. It's found in nature in a lot of plant sources, but most commonly, found in things like energy drinks, coffee, tea, even soda. Nowadays, they even make some foods that contain caffeine. So it's very readily available. So it's important to understand exactly what it does to your body and how it can possibly help you perform. All right. So a few important things to note about caffeine. One, it's absorbed into your system very quickly. So it also empties out of your stomach very quickly, and it reaches peak levels in your blood in around 60 minutes. However, it will stay in your system for between 2 and 10 hours. So it's important to know that once you take it, it could be potentially affecting your body for that longer period of time. To talk about some benefits, it's important to first understand that it's a central nervous system stimulant. Your central nervous system governs a ton of processes in your body. And by stimulating your CNS, these processes are also affected. For example, it can increase your metabolic rate, it can increase your heart rate at rest and during exercise, it can increase your blood pressure, your cardiac output, and your stroke volume of your heart. So it's important to know that before you take it. As far as potential benefits for performance, it's been shown to increase endurance capacity by increasing the time to exhaustion. So basically, it's going to take longer for you to get tired during those endurance type activities, which could be beneficial during training and obviously during competition. It's also been shown to decrease ratings of perceived exertion, which basically means you're going to feel like you're working less hard than you actually are. You might be able to squeeze out a few extra reps, with a certain weight during training, or during practice you might not get as tired during a certain drill. It's also been shown to have some effect on like vertical jump height and other power measures in certain studies. So that's also important to know for training, and even like if you play a jumping sport like basketball, volleyball, something like that. It's also been shown to improve motor skills and cognitive performance, which can be incredibly beneficial during, say a game situation where you're feeling more alert, more focused. Your motor skills are a little bit more in tune with what you're doing. So, of course, a ton of benefits during competition there. Some other benefits, it could potentially help with carbohydrate absorption, which could be beneficial for recovery, or even if you're supplementing with carbohydrate, during a game or practice, caffeine could help, absorb that carbohydrate in your muscle a little bit more quickly. It also has been shown to increase fat oxidation, basically, increasing your body's ability to use fat as fuel, which in turn could spare the usage of glycogen in your muscles. Glycogen is basically just stored carbohydrate in your muscle. So by sparing the usage of that, you could have more energy for shorter duration, high intensity exercise, which is primarily fueled by glycogen or carbohydrate stores. It could potentially increase the excitability of muscle fibers, and also could potentially decrease pain perception, which could be beneficial in performance settings. It's also important to note, like the placebo effect, like taking a substance, it may not have as intense an effect on your body as you think, but if your brain thinks that it does, it could still potentially give you those performance benefits. So, depending on the dosage you take, or even if your body doesn't respond to caffeine, there still could be some sort of placebo effect from consuming caffeine. All right, next we're going to talk about some side effects. So side effects from caffeine are usually felt by non-frequent caffeine users, or some people are just genetically intolerant to caffeine and they'll experience side effects almost every time they take it. Or if you take like an incredibly high dose, you're more likely to experience some of these things. So like gastric distress, like upset stomach, tachycardia, which is like an irregularly high heartbeat, feelings of restlessness, headaches, maybe like some tremors or some shaking, irritability, agitation, which all probably stem from the fact that it's a central nervous system stimulant. It also has a potential diuretic effect, which means it could increase fluid loss by just making you have to pee more. But there's been some evidence that's come out recently that has kind of gone against that, so take that with a grain of salt. For me, the most important side effect of caffeine is related to the duration that it stays in your body. If you're taking caffeine, say in the afternoon or late at night, right, it's going to stay up in your system when you try to go to bed later that night, potentially affecting your sleep schedule. How you recover from your training. For example, like say you have a 7 o'clock game on Friday night and you take 500 milligrams of caffeine before your game, it's going to stay in your body when you try to go to bed. And then you got to play a game on Saturday, and the night before your Saturday game, you're up all night, you can't sleep, you're getting no rest, and it's going to affect your performance the following day. Even during the week, right? So you have to get up for class, or you have practice early in the morning. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're not going to recover, and taking a ton of caffeine every day could potentially affect that. There's been some evidence to support that perpetual or habitual caffeine use decreases its effect. Again, some evidence has come out more recently to go against that. So take it with a grain of salt. It could decrease the effect if you're, almost abusing it on a daily basis. So now that we kind of know the risks involved in taking caffeine and what it actually does to your body, we can kind of recommend who would benefit from caffeine. I think almost any athlete can benefit from it as long as their body can tolerate it well, they're not abusing it, and they understand the risks involved. Whether it's team sport athletes or endurance athletes or Olympic lifters, I think it could be beneficial, especially in a training sense where it could potentially give you more energy to train a little bit harder on any given day. But like I said, it's important to understand the risks as well. Believe it or not, the NCAA does list caffeine as a banned substance. However, there's a certain threshold that must be met before you fail a drug test for caffeine. So that threshold is the equivalent of like 6 to 8 cups of coffee, which is incredibly high dose. And if you're drinking that much caffeine, it probably won't be beneficial for your performance, and you're probably going to see some of those side effects we talked about. So as long as you keep it under that threshold, you should be totally fine. Now just to give some recommendations for usage and timing. Caffeine is a very individually dependent, substance. Like everyone's body reacts to it differently. So I think if you're going to use caffeine, you should try it out in a low-risk setting, like before a training session or before a practice, just to kind of see how your body reacts to it. If you've never used it before, don't just jump right into the deep end and take a huge dose right before a big game. But I guess the general recommendation is 6 milligrams per kilogram of body weight for an athlete. So, you can figure that out on your own by taking your body weight, dividing it by 2.2, and then multiplying by 6 to figure out a good dose for you. So it's important to know that dosage, and it's important to read food labels and kind of, see how much caffeine is in the products that you're consuming. Again, it's all about being informed. As far as timing goes, ideally you want to take it around 60 minutes before exercise, which gives it enough time to be fully absorbed and reach the peak levels in your blood. So that's the optimal timing. And again, it's hard to make a sweeping recommendation on caffeine because everyone is affected differently by it. So just play around with it, try it out. If it doesn't work, then it's not for you. And if you find that it's really helpful to you, just make sure you're not abusing it and you're using it responsibly. Hope you found this helpful, and if you have any questions, feel free